Welcome to the Perfectly Flawed podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. For those that don't know you, would you like to give a bit of an introduction of who you are?
Sure. My name is Beth Tannatt. I am a physical therapist. I'm a mom of two. I just competed at the CrossFit Games in Madison, Wisconsin, as an adaptive athlete. And I came in third. I tied for third in the world. So that's pretty exciting. That was back in July. And yeah, I've been doing CrossFit for 4.5 years now. So it's a big part of my life. I do a lot of, I train a lot. I spend a lot of time in the gym, but also try to balance that with work and kids as well.
Yeah, which I imagine can be quite tricky. What do you mean? Like, obviously, we'll go into a few questions about like what CrossFit is and how you sort of got into it. But what do you mean when you say adaptive athlete? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people that listen that not really understand what that means when you say that.
That's fair. I think there's a lot of people in general that don't know what that means. So adaptive means that it's individuals with permanent impairments. So people that compete as adaptive athletes have any number of impairments. So at the CrossFit Games, they included lower extremity, upper extremity, and neuromuscular. So that those people that were there had some sort of limitation that will not get better. So either they were born with it or it was acquired through trauma, but it's something that they have forever. So it's not somebody that's temporarily injured and then decided to, try their hand at this type of CrossFit. It's people with permanent impairments. So my impairment is kind of a backstory. I was hit by a tractor trailer when I was 20. So that's 24 years ago now, almost. I was in a motor vehicle accident, but I barely survived and I almost lost my leg. So I'm missing about a third of my quadriceps muscle, so the thigh muscle. And I am 2 inches shorter than I used to be because I lost 3 inches of bone in my left femur. So they shortened my right side by 2 inches, lengthened my left side by an inch. And was in a wheelchair for 5 months. I was in a coma for 10 days. I was in the hospital for a month, had to relearn how to walk again, that kind of thing. So essentially my knee is fused. So I have about half of normal knee bend in my knee. And then obviously the muscular component, I'm missing a portion of my muscle. So that leg's a lot weaker. And I also have some nerve damage on that side. So
Yeah, I can't even, it's hard to comprehend. And obviously, like you've lived through it, and I don't think anyone can fully understand it unless you've been through it yourself. How was the recovery from that? Obviously, like you're quite active now. What was it like? Obviously, there was quite an extensive period in hospital and relearning those basics. Once you sort of got to that stage to, I guess, in quotations, a normal functioning person, what was it like after that in terms of your activity levels?
It took me quite a while to get back into exercise as a regular regimen. Before my accident, I was a runner, which is kind of ironic because I don't run now, and running, I hate it. It's like my least favorite thing to do, pretty much. But when I was in high school and early college, that was like what I did for stress. So like easy to run because all you have to do is like exit your door and hit the pavement and there you are. And so that was kind of what I would do to relieve stress. That's what I did to stay active. That's what I did I ran track and that kind of thing when I was in high school. And then post accident, that was not possible. I tried to run several times and it just was painful. It was frustrating because I couldn't run like I used to be able to run. So I like couldn't just exit my door and go running like for 3 miles. That was like a typical run for me when I was able-bodied is what they call it, but before my accident. Um, and so like I would go for like 2 minutes, and that was as much as I could tolerate, both with pain and endurance and whatever. So it was very frustrating. So I'm trying to think like when I started to get back into exercise, probably when I went back to college. So my accident was in May of 98, and then I went back to school in September of 99. And I didn't exercise initially because I was walking with a cane when I first went back to school. And then I had a surgery. So it was probably a good solid 2 years from the time of my accident until I started to get back into exercise. And it really just started as like cardio based stuff. And I started on the elliptical. I tried to do the treadmill kind of here and there, and like tried to do like running intervals to try to get back into running, but really it just frustrated me more than anything. So it started out as like, just elliptical. I would do like the stair climber. I don't even know if places have the stair climber anymore, but like they were still a thing when I was in college. And I did start doing free weights probably like 2 years after I went back to school. So not initially. I think I did just cardio for like the first year or so, and then started to try to get into some weight training and things like that afterwards. And in terms of like exercise, it wasn't, I didn't find it to be particularly uncomfortable. Obviously, my endurance was way down because I hadn't been exercising for quite a while. But other than running, nothing was particularly uncomfortable. It just was hard to kind of get used to how my body moved, now, because, I had a lot of weakness still in my hip, and I had gone through a period of physical therapy myself. I went for like a solid year, 3 times a week to physical therapy. But, being a physical therapist myself, looking back at the physical therapy that I got, there was nothing wrong with it, but it didn't actually prepare me all that well for like daily function. So like I could take care of myself. I could get myself like, in the shower and like wash myself and dress myself and all of that good stuff. But as far as like walking without a limp or things like that, like it just didn't hone in on that kind of stuff. So, I'm not sure like how much you've been privy to like what insurance is like here in the States, but like you get to a certain point and insurance is like, okay, you're all done, like you're good enough, and then they send you on your way, but it isn't necessarily like where you should be at functionally. So to some degree, and that's insurance and the downfall of insurance here, and healthcare. But like people are left kind of to their own devices to actually really get to a point where they're like back to normal, And it really wasn't until I went into PT school. So that was, I graduated in 2005, so 2004. So that was 6 years later, 5 or 6 years later, where I really started to hone in on like the weakness that I had in my hip, and like really trying to improve how I was walking, how I was like how my movement patterns were and things like that, and trying to correct all of that stuff. Part of that was being in PT and like knowing that the way my body was moving wasn't ideal. And part of it was just like I had to take ownership of making myself stronger, because physical therapy is only going to take you so far, and like doing exercises on the table is only going to take you so far in being able to function in life. So like those physical therapy exercises aren't what made it so that I could, I had my daughter when I was 30, and like being able to get up off the couch and still hold my baby and not have to be like, hey, you need to take her because I need to be able to stand up and use my arms. It was what I did after PT and like all of that fitness that I did afterwards, all that strengthening, all that time that I took, that enabled me to be able to get up off the couch with my daughter and not have to have somebody else take her. and be able to carry her up the stairs and not have to rely on a hand railing to be able to get myself up the stairs while I carried her. And so it was a lot of that, like all the free weight stuff that I was, as a woman, it's hard to like go into that free weight area and feel comfortable, I think, sometimes, because it tends to be dominated by males. And so you feel like you're being looked at funny, and like people are wondering why you're over there and what is she doing here? She doesn't know what she's doing. But it was all that like training with weights and doing squats and doing deadlifts and stuff like that that actually made it so that I could care for my daughter and not have to like use assistive devices and things like that. So like that's really what improved my function. So it took quite a long time to actually get to that point where I felt like I was more normal and in a like normal fitness routine than not. I mean, it was a kind of a journey, I guess, after the car accident to like finally realize that using weights is what was going to get me stronger and better functionally than doing all that cardio.
Yeah, 100%. And there's so many things that I would want to unpack in that. I mean, from my point of view, I fractured my spine and had surgery, and, I'm 4 months post surgery now. So whilst I am back to a lot of normal activities and I'm doing sport again, there are little things sort of along the way. And as you said, like things that people don't really think about, like when I got home from the hospital, it's like, okay, well, you're not allowed to bend or twist or, those sort of things. It's like, okay, well, how do I bend down to put my socks on to get dressed in the morning? Or, even now it's like, okay, well, I'm not allowed to bend over and have that flexion of my back with a loaded weight. It's like, okay, well, how do I lift my mattress to make my bed and tuck the sheet in? Or how do I bend down to pick up the washing basket to hang the washing out?
Right.
Things like that you just don't think about, that are sort of that getting back to normal, that sort of gets overlooked. Like whilst I did rehab in a hospital environment for 7 weeks twice a week, it's, yeah, you've got your core strength back, like off you go, like you're on your way. As you said, it's to a point. It's like, what about all these other functional things that should be included that you don't sort of realize until after, and you go home and you go and try and do that. You're like, oh, actually, how do I go and do that now? And before it was so simple, you didn't even think about it.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So how did you sort of transition then, as you said, like it was quite a journey those few years to sort of, and those weights and then having your daughter. How did you then transition into starting CrossFit?
So I started, let's see. So I started weight training. And even when I had, like, while I was pregnant with my daughter, I did more cardio than I did anything else. And I knew that weight training was something that I needed to include on a regular basis. But it also was one of those things that I was like, they tell you when you get pregnant, don't do anything that you weren't doing pre-pregnancy. So it was something that I had not gotten into the routine of. So I was like, well, now is not the time to start doing weights. So we'll wait until after I have my daughter. So when I got into weight training, it was shortly after I had her. And thankfully, the gym that I went to at the time had childcare. So that was one of the big reasons why I ended up where I did, because they had like a childcare room, and they had a bunch of toys, and she loved to go in there, and she loved the people that were in there. So it allowed me to be able to do my hour and 15 minutes of exercise and know that she was being taken care of. And like the room was glass. So it was like in the center of the gym, and you could just see like what was going on. So if there was ever any issue, like she was right there, you know what I mean? So I could see if there was something happening. So once I got back into weight training, it was like I had done weight training when I was in high school, and I loved it. It was like something that I did, to supplement what I was doing with running and whatever. We had this thing, I don't even remember what it was called, but it had like resistance bands on this bench, and I used to do that. So it was like resistance training. And then sometimes I would go to the Y and I would lift weights with like my track friends. So getting back into weight training was almost like kind of a long lost love. I hadn't been doing it for quite a while, and then once I started getting back into it, it was like I immediately loved the weights again. Like it was something I couldn't get enough of. So once I started doing that, I had a friend that her boyfriend was a personal trainer and did bodybuilding, and she was like, my personal trainer, he does, bodybuilding competitions. And I was like, that seems kind of silly. And I was like, I don't know that I want to do that. And she was like, well, they're the all natural competitions and they do polygraphs and all this stuff. Cause I was like, I don't want to be like all like glistened up and like standing on stage and whatever. So, but I was loving weight training so much, and I had started like getting back into running. I finally was able to like get to a point where running was more comfortable, probably a lot to do with the weight training that I was doing. So there was a lot more support around my joints, around my bones, so I wasn't feeling like every single, step on the ground didn't feel like a jolt through my entire body. So the fact that I was building up that strength probably enabled me to get back into running the way that I did. And I did one of those like couch to 5K things. So then once I started doing that, then I was like, I want to start running races. And so I did that kind of regularly, but I was like, my running is never going to be good because like I can't, my stride isn't very long because I can't bend my knee. And so like I'm pretty limited as far as like how fast I'm ever going to be able to go. So I'm never going to be good at running. And then so then I was like, well, maybe I could be good at bodybuilding, because if it's all natural, then the fact that like I'm a little bit smaller shouldn't be like a huge deal, because nobody's like, taking stuff that they shouldn't be taking. And I was like, maybe I'll try it and just kind of see how I like it. So I did that for 3 years, and I did love it. However, I do have I don't know if you saw on Instagram or whatever, but there's like a post that's been circling around, like it's been reposted and reposted and reposted of, there's a picture of me on the left where I'm very, 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 very skinny. And then a picture on the right where I'm like lifting, I think I was deadlifting that day, after I had found CrossFit. And the picture on the left actually was me during my bodybuilding days. That was the second show that I had ever done. And it was the show that I placed the best at. And I was so small. And it was, I had dealt with disordered eating for the majority of my entire life. And it wasn't until there was a fad that was going on, and you probably are too young to even remember that this was a thing, but it was called IAFYM. So it was if it fits your macros. And it was like this fitness trend or whatever that was going around, that like basically you could eat anything you wanted if it fit your macros. So if you got your allotted carbs, protein, and fat for the day, you could literally eat whatever you want. So I didn't go that far. Like I think that's a little bit extreme. But it was that when I started switching to IAFYM, it was the idea that like no food was good or bad, and those labels really messed with my head, and that really fed into like my disordered eating habits. So like I would restrict and restrict and restrict, and when I was in high school, it was like I would only allow myself X amount of calories for the day, which was usually like 1,000 or less, which is ridiculous because I was running track and I was like super active and whatever. And once you get to a certain point, you're like, I want whatever it is, say ice cream or whatever, but then you can't stop at like a scoop of ice cream. You have to have like the entire gallon of ice cream. And then it goes from the ice cream to like this other thing, like the chocolate chips that are in the pantry, or like the cookies or whatever. And so I would like binge until I would make myself sick. And then I'd be like, well, I'm not going to do that again. So I'm going to like restrict. So it was like this like never ending cycle. So finally, when IIFYM came around, and I was like, I can have a little bit and fit it into like what I'm supposed to get for the day. It was almost like this light bulb that like food is not good and bad. It's just food and it's fuel. But then when I got into bodybuilding, it was almost like it brought back all of that stuff, like all of that wanting to be smaller and wanting to shrink myself into oblivion and wanting to, restrict my food. And it just was done in a more organized manner. You know what I mean? Like when I was in high school, it was a lot less organized, but like now I had a purpose because now I had an end goal and I wanted to get on stage and I wanted to be lean and I wanted to be, have like whatever amount of body fat and you want to drop however many pounds per week. And so you're like constantly weighing in and you're constantly measuring your food. So it was like feeding into that all over again. And, when I woke up on that day, when I took that picture, I remember thinking that like I was bloated. Like I took the picture and I was like, I'm bloated. I'm going to do terribly in this show. I feel awful. All of that body dysmorphia was still there. Like it was still present. And, after my 3 years of doing bodybuilding, I got to that last show and I was like, my body is sending me some serious signals that I have to stop. So like I hadn't had a period in almost a year. My hormones were all out of whack. My digestive system was awful. And I could eat like a list of 10 things. And I'm not even kidding. I wish I was kidding. It was like 10 things that I could possibly eat that didn't bother my stomach. So like I would say, I would like to think that like my experience was unique in the fact that it messed me up so bad, but it's not. And I've talked to so many other women that have done bodybuilding that end up in the same exact spot and like gained a ton of weight and like their hormones were all messed up and their digestive system was all messed up. And it takes years to come back from all of that. So like when I took a break from bodybuilding, I was like, I'm just going to take a break. Like I'm going to take a year off. I'm going to do something else. And during that break is when I found CrossFit. Long story, even longer, like super long story to answer your question. So, when I took that break, I found CrossFit and my friend was like, you need to come to my CrossFit gym. And I was like, I tried CrossFit before. Don't really know that I love it. I don't know that it's for me. I didn't drink the Kool-Aid the first time that I tried it. I was like, it's all right. And then I was like, well, maybe it would be like a good way to supplement what I'm already doing, like my weight training that I'm already doing. I'll try out a class and see what I think and whatever. And she's like, my gym's different. I was like, yeah, I've heard that before.
Yeah.
So I went to try out a class and their free classes were like Thursdays and they did more like accessory work whatever. And so I went in and I was like, I really like the coaches. I liked the people. And it was almost like personal training, sort of, because it was like small group training because they capped their classes at 12. So they had like a good class size. So you didn't feel like you were getting lost in the mix of people. And so I went to that first class. And then I remember whenever I would try to take a class after that, I didn't want there to be any more than like 3 other people in the class because I didn't want anyone to like see me. I mean, you would think that you would want to be one of many, but I also didn't want to get like lost in the shuffle. I didn't want there to be too many people to watch me because I'm like, I am so far out of my comfort zone. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know most of these movements. And so I felt like the more people that were there, the more people that could see me doing things wrong. But we ended up, there was one day I went in and we were doing deadlifts one day, and that's something that I still struggle with is deadlifts. And I remember there was one of the owners was coaching that day, and she just gave me like this one small cue. It wasn't even anything like earth shattering, but it was something that I hadn't thought of before, and I don't even remember what it is now. But it was enough to make it feel like my normal, what would be close to like my 1 rep max, felt like I could have done 10 of them. And I was like, there is something different here. Like, this is a different place. It is a different gym than many other gyms that I've been in. And I decided to stop working with my personal trainer. I like dove all in. I was like, I am signing up, like, give me the unlimited membership. I'm here because there is something different here, and I want to be here, and I want to be a part of it. And that was it. Like, I want to say that was in July of 2017.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I mean, as you said, I think unfortunately it is so common for women and even young girls, even today, having those body dysmorphia issues and eating disorders. And
Mm-hmm.
like, it's so prevalent. It's scary. It's, every person you
It
talk to almost has a story these
is.
days. And I think social media also plays a part in it too. And I've scrolled through your social media, and I think it's amazing how you post about it and are so open and so real, because it could make at least one person feel less alone. Like, oh, they
Mm-hmm.
felt that too. Like, so have I. Like, I thought I was the only one. And really,
Mm-hmm.
there's so many people out there that we just don't know that are experiencing those things too.
It's amazing to me just because, like, of that one post, I've had several people reach out and just be like, what you've said really touched me, or that's what I needed to hear on this day because I'm struggling with XYZ. I had a gentleman like reach out because his girlfriend is struggling with eating disorders, and he's like, how can I help her? And just all of these things. And I am by no means any expert. It's just that's been my experience. Like, I just experienced that. But I feel like, some people are free to talk about it and other people don't want to talk about it at all. And it's something that, gets kind of swept under the rug, and it's ugly, and, people don't want to be raw and real about stuff like that. But, like, if I don't share about that, I feel like it's such a big part of my life that I'm not sharing. And if I have the opportunity to have, you know, between the CrossFit games and that post cycling all over the place, thousands of followers, if I can reach even like a minuscule part of those people, that I feel like that's what I want to do. Like, I want to help whoever I can help, however I can help them. And, if that's just by sharing my experience and being real about like how I felt and how I feel, and showing people that like it's possible to get out of that horrible cycle of like hating yourself. I mean, I can't tell you how long I would look at myself in the mirror and it was like I hated myself. I used to like tell myself horrible things that I would never say to like my worst enemy because of this body dysmorphia. Like, you just can't, you're not seeing what's real. And it's possible to get out of it. It takes a long, I'm like, it's not like it doesn't take work. It definitely does. But like, it's possible to turn it around and be like, no, I don't want to take up less space. I don't want to shrink myself into oblivion. I don't want to be like, the tiniest little piece of this world. I want to take up more space. I want to be strong. I want to celebrate what I can do. I want to celebrate what my body can do. And whatever it looks like when I'm doing those things and the things that I love, then I'm okay with that. Like, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's such a valid point that you make in that. And, obviously, like, you're not an expert, but you have a lived experience that you can speak from. What would
Mm-hmm.
you say were some of those key turning points for you in sort of that journey to stop hating yourself? I mean, I'm sure you still have bad days even now,
Oh,
but
absolutely.
they're fewer and far between. What were some of
Mm-hmm.
those things that you did to get to the headspace that you're in now?
Well, I mean, like I said, the big thing was like with my eating was like, stop labeling the good foods and bad foods. Like, there's no such thing as good and bad foods. Everything is fuel, can be used for fuel. Obviously, you don't want to live on Pop Tarts and French fries, but those things can be included in your daily food if that's what you want, if that's what you crave. And I think that sometimes people think that cravings are bad. Like cravings almost have like a negative connotation to them. But like sometimes your body is craving something because that's what it needs. Like it needs some extra salt, it needs some extra sugar, it needs whatever. So like, you know, you kind of have to start listening to your body and what it's trying to tell you rather than you telling it how awful it is. So that was one of the big like mind shifts of like trying to understand like what my body was trying to tell me rather than me telling my body how awful and bad it was and how wrong it was. Um, and really it was when, and it's going to sound silly because like everybody's like CrossFit, 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 but really like when I started doing CrossFit, I just started to have my eyes open to how all of these women that were in this gym were so strong and capable, but they all look so different. Like they're not all built like Tia Claire Toomey. They're not all looking like Sarah Sigmundsdottir. Like they're not super beefy and muscular and whatever. And I think that those bodies are beautiful, but also so are every.
No. I'm so sorry, my internet dropped
That's
out.
okay. No problem.
Oh, that's so annoying. I swear every Zoom I've ever done has had some sort of technical glitch. It happens
Glitch,
every
yeah.
time. It's like
Yeah.
almost impossible to avoid. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
No
So
worries.
I'm trying to think what we're up to. You're talking about CrossFit, strong women. I think that's where I lost you.
Is that where it dropped out?
I think so.
So okay. So all I was saying was like, you know, walking into a gym where there's so many different people, so many different women, and they're doing all of these very cool things with their bodies. Like they're lifting these crazy weights and they're doing these amazing gymnastics and like their lifts look beautiful and all of these things. But like none of their bodies look the same. So like nobody is, you know, it's not like there's a cookie cutter body. Whereas like, you know, what I wanted to be was like the skinny girl that was in that picture. I mean, that picture on the left, that's what I wanted to look like. Even though at the time I didn't realize that that's what I looked like because like I wanted to look like that, but I didn't realize that that's what I looked like. Does that make sense? Like
Yep.
I wanted to be that skinny person, but when I saw myself, that is not what I saw. So I wanted the thigh gap. I wanted, and which I will never have because I just genetically do not have that. So, like, just being able to accept the differences in my own body, but also like looking at all these women and seeing all the differences in their bodies and how everybody's built differently, but they're all doing all this really cool stuff. It was about celebrating like what I could actually do with my body and trying to make myself as strong as possible. And whatever it was, it was just eye opening to be in that gym because it was like, it was kind of like, well, I want to be strong like that. And whatever my body looks like when I build that strength, I'm going to be okay with because that's really my ultimate goal is being able to do that with my body and do these cool things and be strong and capable. And I don't care and I don't want to be that tiny little girl that's like shrunk into oblivion, that's weak and can't do those things. So it was almost like a light bulb moment, like, you know, being surrounded by all of these women and realizing like how strong and beautiful all of them were, but none of them were the same.
Yeah, and I think so many people can resonate with that because as you sort of touched on earlier before, is it can be quite intimidating to go into a gym as a female. As you said, it's a
Mm-hmm.
very male dominated area and it can be daunting. It's like, I want to do these things, but I don't want to look like an idiot and, embarrass myself or, those
Mm-hmm.
sort of things. It's like, I want to get stronger, but how do I do that? And then you get self-conscious, like, are they looking at me because I'm doing it wrong? Are they looking at me
Mm-hmm.
because they're impressed? Like, why, like, what does that look mean? There's so many things that sort of run through your mind when you're doing those things, but when you see those strong women, regardless of what sort of body shape they have, it's amazing to see.
Mm-hmm. It really is. And it's awesome that it's all like, you know, they're all encompassed into like this one environment. You know, it's just like they're even this past weekend I worked at a CrossFit event as a physical therapist. Like we were just providing, like if people kind of tweaked something or whatever, we were just providing services on site. And the women that were there, I mean, there were men there too, but I was paying attention to the women because there were more women than there were men. And it was a team competition, but like, you know, there were women that were super tall, there were women that were shorter, there were women that were, you know, had bigger muscles, there were women with smaller muscles, there were masters athletes, there were like teenagers. I mean, there was just so many women in this one gym. They were all doing the same stuff and like just moving and being strong and amazing. And none of them looked the same. And I just think that that's just so cool.
Yeah, it's incredible. And you also said at the beginning of our chat that you tied third at the most recent
Mm-hmm.
CrossFit Games. What was that like?
Well, I didn't find out actually until 2 days after the competition was over. So like they did the podium ceremony and whatever, and I thought that, well, I knew I had tied for third, but we didn't know that I like flat out tied. Like I should have been part of the podium ceremony as well, but like it never happened. This literally never happened in the history of the CrossFit Games ever, because they have an odd number of events so that you don't tie. And then there are tiebreakers in place. So they put it so that like the person who has the most number of first, second, third, fourth, whatever, that's the tiebreaker. So they literally have I mean, up to 5 tiebreakers in place, and we tied on literally everything. So we tied in one event, so there were only 6 events left because we had flat out tied on one. And then we both had the same number of second, third, fourth, and fifth. So we like our points were completely the same. So when I found out, I thought that there was some tiebreaker that I didn't know about, because I was like, well, maybe they did it based on the max lift because she beat me in that. And so I asked my friend Kevin Ogar, who's part of the ATA. He's was one of the head guys at CrossFit Games, and I was like, hey, just like, I don't mean to be a pain, like I'm just curious, like, do you know what the tiebreaker was for between me and Sarah? And he was like, well, it would be, you know, it would come down to whoever had the most, you know, first, second, third. I was like, I get that. But if you look at our placings, we have exactly the same. Like our placings were exactly the same. And he was like, actually, I don't know. Let me ask Alec. And because Alec is the head of the ATA. And he looked into the rule book and he's like, based on the rule book, you guys tied. And I was like, okay. And he's like, let me ask the scoring people. So like he got in contact with the scoring people. So this like happened over, so we were done on Thursday. Podium ceremony was on Thursday. I asked on Friday because I was like, I'm not going to ask the day of podium because like I don't want to be a pain and like, you know, whatever. But I just am curious. And so they like went through the whole thing, and Alec was like, I don't know, but I'm going to find out for you. And so he was in contact with me on, so I asked on Friday, he was in contact with me on Saturday, and he was like, so I'm still looking into it, but it looks like you guys tied. And I was like, okay. And he's like, are you going to be around tomorrow? And tomorrow being Sunday. And I was going to fly out on Sunday. I wasn't going to go back to the venue, but funny story, I ended up planning on going back to the venue because the people at the Whoop tent told me that I had to bring my strap back in order to get my 6 months free from Whoop, which was one of the things that they gave the athletes. So I was really annoyed at the Whoop people because I was like, my strap's back at the hotel. I have to bring it back to the venue. I wasn't going to come back here. And I think my flight was leaving at like 3 o'clock or something. So I was like, well, I could technically come back to the venue until like noon and then go grab my stuff and go to the airport and have plenty of time to check in. And so when Alec asked me, he's like, are you going to come over to the venue? I actually think it was that Sunday morning. And I was like, actually, yeah, because I have to bring my Whoop band over to the tent and get the thing activated. And he was like, well, okay, because you guys definitely tied and they're going to give you your medal this morning. And I was like, okay. I didn't really expect it to be like a big deal. I just expected them to be like, hey, here's your medal.
Yeah.
Instead, Alec was like, hey, meet me outside of the Noble store. And he's like, we're going to go over to Coliseum. And I was like, okay. So we went over to the Coliseum, and Dave Castro gave me my medal. And Justin Berg was in the back, the VP of, I think that's his name. I'm really bad with names. So if that's not right, edit that out. The VP of CrossFit was there talking to me while I was waiting for Dave Castro. He brought me my medal. He put that on, and then we went out on the Coliseum floor and took pictures. So that was kind of cool because like the podium ceremony was just people from the ATA and like on the podium, yes, but like it was in the Fit Aid tent. So like it wasn't in the Coliseum. It wasn't like this big, I mean, it was a ceremony, but like it wasn't like this huge thing. So like the fact that Dave Castro gave me my medal and we went out on the Coliseum floor to take pictures, like that was pretty cool. So and they were very apologetic about the whole thing, and they're like, this never happens, like in the history of CrossFit this has never happened, so like we didn't, nobody looked into it and whatever. I was like, it's, it happened, it's fine. Like I totally understand. So it was pretty awesome, but like I did miss out on the podium experience, so I am hoping that I make it back this year and like I can actually get that podium experience, because like that would be pretty awesome.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question is, if that's sort of what you've done now, what's next? What's the next goal? What's the next competition? What's next for Beth?
So Wheelwad Games is actually, I leave Wednesday. I go to Raleigh, North Carolina to compete. And Wheelwad is the foundation, I guess they'll call it, organization that was founded like 10 years ago by Chris Stoutenberg. And he basically founded it so to start programming for adaptive athletes and to have competitions for us. So throughout the 10 years, he's like studied all of us and like found what movements are possible, because I was just talking to somebody, a CrossFit out in, I don't know, Switzerland or something. They contacted me through Instagram. And, I said, what athletes are going to think that they're capable of is very different than what they are actually capable of. Because like when I started CrossFit, I was like, I can't do that, and I can't do that, and I can't do that. And most of the things that I said I couldn't do, I am doing now. So like, Chris has been studying us for a very long time to figure out like what movements are proper, like that we can do and are capable of, and other movements that probably are unsafe or not necessary, too much impact, that kind of stuff. So anyway, we have the wheel walk games, which used to be what the adaptive version of the CrossFit games would be, because like until this year, CrossFit didn't have us included in with the CrossFit games. So it's just adaptive athletes from all around the world. I'm not sure how many of our international athletes are actually coming, just because COVID and all of that stuff, that red tape to get into the States. But there's like 160 of us, I think, that are going to be going to Raleigh and competing. So there's lower extremity, just like there was at the CrossFit Games, except they have it broken down into 1 point of contact and 2 points of contact. So 1 point of contact would be either double amputee. So like a person, one of the girls had both of her feet amputated. So she's considered 1 point of contact, but also above knee amputees. So those would also be 1 point of contact, obviously. And then 2 points is really anybody else. So like myself, anybody that's below knee amputee is also 2 points. Ankle stuff, people with club foot, that kind of thing, would be 2 points. So they do break it down so that it's a little bit more of a level playing field, rather than having somebody that doesn't have a leg at all competing against somebody that has like an ankle thing. So
Yeah.
So that starts on Friday, and it goes Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Word is we have 11 events in 3 days, so that's going to be pretty intense. And hopefully that goes well and I come out in one piece. And then after that, I did qualify for Wadapalooza, which is in Miami. That's in January. I declined my invite just because it's not a good time for me right now. So after the Wheelwad Games, my next thing is going to be the Open. So that's in February. And then the Open will then qualify us to go, if they're going to take top 20 this year, from the Open to then advance on to the quarterfinals, I think. Quarterfinals, semifinals, I forget which one comes first and then the other one comes. So whichever one it is. Yeah. And then from that, they'll take the top 5, upper, lower, and neuro onto the CrossFit Games. So that's my ultimate goal, is to make it back to the CrossFit Games this summer. And there's some, hoops to jump through and to get there. So
yeah, that's amazing. I mean, obviously, as you said, like there's quite a lot of competition sort of in between and to build up into that. But I mean, even just having those comps in between sort of gives you those small stepping stones and goals to sort of work towards. So it's not just like, oh, like it's, CrossFit Games, in summer, it's like that's so far away and it can get overwhelming. It's sort of broken down a little bit for you.
Yeah. And, it's good to have, I think that they wanted to make it so that the adaptive athletes had a similar experience to the able-bodied athletes, in terms of like the number of qualifiers or whatever you want to call them that we have to go through in order to get to the game. So like for the able-bodied athletes, they have the Open and then whatever it is, the semifinals, quarterfinals, then they have whatever the second one is, and then it's the game. So like they have one additional one in for the able-bodied ones, or the able-bodied athletes, versus what we have to do. But still they're kind of making our experience very similar to what the able-bodied athletes do. So I think that's kind of cool too.
Yeah, that is really cool. I like to do 3 questions to finish with. And the first one is my favorite question. And it is, what is something that you're most proud of about yourself?
Most proud of? Let's see. I would say that I don't let anyone tell me what I can do, and that is like multifaceted. Like after my car accident, I was told I was never going to run again. I was probably going to have to walk with an assistive device my entire life. So a cane, a walker, something like that. And I was told that my quality of life would probably not be what I wanted it to be pre-accident. Like those kind of, it was almost like, the hopes and dreams that you had before your accident, you might have to modify those things because you have these limitations. And it's almost like when someone tells me something like that, it makes me want it even more. So like, I'm like, well, you watch, because what you said I couldn't do, I'm going to do. So, all the things that I've been able to do physically, becoming a physical therapist and being able to empathize with my patients, you know, it, that trauma is something that I would never want to experience again, but it's something that has shaped me into who I am. And it's something that I've been able to use throughout my life to identify with other people, because of the horrible experiences that I have been through earlier in my life. And I think that it makes me a better physical therapist because I do have that ability to empathize. And that was something that I felt like I was missing as a patient. So it's like all of these things that I was told I probably wouldn't do. And I don't think that they ever thought that I would even be able to do physical therapy because of the limitations that I have. But here I am, and I'm a physical therapist, and I went to the CrossFit games and I tied for third in the world. And like, that's all really cool to me. So I like, my biggest thing is there's nothing, and I feel like people are, it's not just me, like people throughout their lives a lot of times are told like, why would you do that, or you can't do that. Like, don't ever accept that answer. Don't ever accept somebody telling you that you can't do something, because nothing is impossible. Like, you can figure it out. There's a way to do whatever it is that you're wanting to do, and nothing is ever impossible. And I tell my kids that all the time. I'm like, whatever you want to do, dream big, because you never know. And you just work hard and you may get exactly what you want.
100%. The next question I have is, what is your favorite quote and or the best piece of advice that you've been given?
I have a couple of favorite quotes. So my mantra for the year is remove all doubt.
Mm-hmm.
And that has to do with a lot of different things. But it's kind of like the thing that I keep in the back of my head when I train. I had it tattooed on my arm. It's on my barbell. It's everywhere. But it just has to do with like not ever leaving anything to chance, and just removing any question that there might be. And you can apply that to like anything. This in my case applies to like the fitness realm, but it really can apply to like any point in life. And then my second favorite is be relentless in the pursuit of what sets your heart on fire. And I love that quote because, like, again, applies to anything. That could be fitness, that could be your career, that could be your ultimate passion in life. Like, it could be anything. But just being like, thinking about being relentless, being relentless, and what sets your heart and your soul on fire. Like, not just something that you're content with, but like what makes you tick. And I just love that because I'm like, I just got to keep pushing and to get exactly what makes me tick, what is my passion, like what sets me on fire. So that just kind of makes me excited. I just love that.
Yeah, and it's really good. The last one I have is, any tips or advice for those that are listening?
Oh, just one step at a time. just take every moment, every day, one step at a time. If you feel like you're like things are ever hopeless, just remember that like this is not the end. It feels like it is, but this is not the end. And there's going to be a day where you're going to look back, and the day when things are brighter and in your life the sun is shining and you're on the other side, it's going to those low points are what's going to make you appreciate those high points so much more, because you've been through the drudges of whatever it is. And once you get out of it, like you just appreciate where you are so much more because you did experience those crappy moments.
Yeah, I agree. There's been so many things that we've covered in our chat today, and I'm sure that anyone listening will be able to take something from this 100%. So thank you so much for joining me today
My
and
pleasure.
sharing as much as you have. It's been awesome.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for asking. I've really enjoyed chatting with you, and it's been awesome. This has been really fun.